Aloha. Thank you for watching tonight. I'm Representative George Fontaine, and you are watching The Fontaine Factor. This evening, we're going to be talking about sex trafficking in Hawaii. This is a major industry in Hawaii as well as the rest of the country. It's estimated by one expert that the amount of money that is spent or raised from sex trafficking and prostitution is somewhere between $37 billion in this country. And as we will talk about later in the program, this may actually be a very conservative estimate. I'm very pleased this evening to have two guests on. We have a victim who managed to escape and has survived, correcting me now already, not a victim, but a survivor of sex trafficking, Kalei. We will not be using her last name for her privacy. And also with us tonight we have Kathy Xian from the Pacific Alliance to Stop Slavery. Thank you for both of you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
This is a very important topic. As I was sharing earlier before we started the show, having worked as an undercover police officer in the 80s and watching and witnessing some of the things that were going on in a lot of the Korean bars, and as we unfolded the investigation of prostitution and even in those areas, how these women were being moved around the country from place to place to serve as prostitutes. And basically, many of these women came from Korea or from other Southeast Asian areas and were brought to this country and found themselves trapped in a situation where they couldn't get out, many of them. To get a better understanding about what being a victim of sex trafficking or a survivor of sex trafficking, I'd like to start, before we talk to Kalei, to show you a tape of a victim. If you could roll that.
I was 21. I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area. I met my P at a party, but I had no idea that he was a P. And when I say P, I mean like pimp. And one day he asked me, "Do you want to go on vacation?" And I knew like this vacation is not going to be a vacation. When I got to Hawaii, we stayed at the hotel. So he just really put me out there like, do it on your own. Whatever happens to you happens, but bring my money back. I went back to the hotel. He counted the money and he wasn't satisfied with the amount, and he proceeded to beat me relentlessly, punching, choking, slapping, stumping, kicking, throwing me. I remember he ripped off all my clothes. I'm totally, naked. He hung me over the railing. We was on the 22nd floor. He was just dangling me like, "I will kill you, bitch. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna drop you. Where's my money?" And I remember I prayed to God. I said, "I am so sorry. Please forgive me. If I'm going to die, just forgive me."
Shocking, to say the least. Kalei, you are a person that has actually gone through this. Would you mind telling us and the audience and sharing a little bit of your story and maybe how you got involved and what was happening in that lifestyle?
Sure. Well, it started here in Hawaii. I'm a local girl, born and raised here my whole life, and I was 25, divorced, a single mom, just trying to make a living, and I had a full-time job, I had a career going, I even have a college degree, and I started going out to nightclubs, and one night at a nightclub is where I met a man, and that was the beginning of my nightmare. It started off as casual friends, and like any relationship, when you meet someone, you think it's normal, and hey, let's see where this can go. We started going out on dates, and a few weeks into that, he shared with me, he said, "I want to offer you a business opportunity. I own an escort service, and I want you to start that." By that time, he knew so much about me. He knew my family. He knew my daughter. He knew where I lived. He knew where I worked. He knew everything about me. And the whole time, that was his plan, to learn about me so he feels that he has that control over me. So from that point on, that's where I realized I wouldn't be able to leave. The threats started coming, and the more I got involved, he would tell me to do more. And if I didn't do more, he would threaten me. The abuse started coming, and he would threaten to harm my family, take away my daughter. things like that. And the fear that he instilled in me was unexplainable. You know, I felt like I had to continue. I felt like there was no one to turn to, nowhere to go. I felt like no one understood. And the whole time, you know, those few weeks turned into 2 years. And throughout that time, I ran away countless times. And each time I ran away, it just got worse and worse. He'd find me, he'd beat me, abuse me. One time it got so bad, he was hiding in my apartment when I got home, and because I didn't listen to him to go home when he told me to go home, he was hiding in my apartment waiting in my bedroom closet. The moment I entered my house and went in my room, he knocked on the closet door and started beating me. He dragged me to the bathroom and started cutting my hair, and the next thing I know it, I woke up and I was surrounded in my hair and blood. And, you know, at that moment, I just cried out. I thought, what else is there to do? You know, I felt like no one could hear me. I wanted so desperately to get away from this man, and every time I tried, I felt like I failed, because I would get hurt, you know, I would be abused worse, and I felt like the world was just caving in on me until I reached the bottom of my pit.
You know, it's just unimaginable. I mean, you know, I'm sure viewers were probably thinking like, well, why didn't you just call the police, you know?
Right.
I mean, maybe you can tell us a little bit about, you know, why you couldn't do certain things or felt that you couldn't.
Well, the threats were so deep, and, you know, that control he had over me, you know, I didn't want anything to happen to my family. I thought, you know, I'm the one that met this man. I'm not going to bring any violence or any harm to my family. So you know, that's what I was doing to try to protect my family. And I thought, you know what, I have to continue, or he's really going to do something to my family, to my child. And of course, that's the last thing I ever wanted to happen. And you know, I seen things I shouldn't have seen. You know, the abuse, he wouldn't only beat me, he would beat other girls, other women, you know, and harmfully. So I really knew that, you know what, if I don't listen to this man, he could kill me. He could do something to my family. And that's the last thing I want. So I felt trapped.
How many other girls do you know that he was doing this to?
Well, in that lifestyle, girls constantly come and go as they're all trying to get away from this, you know, the pimp that they're working for at some point or another. So girls come and go all the time. I've met a lot of girls and women throughout the 2 years that I was in that lifestyle. And, you know, it's just, I've seen things I shouldn't have seen. And it happens here in Hawaii, and that's why I'm here today, to really share with the community that, yes, it happens here in our very own state of Hawaii, you know.
What was the youngest age of girls that you saw?
15.
Wow.
Yes.
So he would actually, and how did he do the recruiting for that? Did he go to the schools? I mean.
So these traffickers, these pimps, you know, they put 200% into recruiting girls and women, and that's what we don't see. They're at the malls, they're at schools hanging out, they're at your local Starbucks. They look like an average, you know, just someone hanging out. And then they start to pick up girls, and that's what they do. And once they do that, you know, they get into their mind, they start manipulating these girls, they start, especially the younger victims, what they do is they're naive and they're vulnerable, so they're easy prey to them. So they'll make them think that they're the pimps are their boyfriend, and you know that, you know, they love them, and these pimps will tell the girls anything they want to hear, and until they feel that they got them. And then they'll play on that, and they'll say, okay, well, if you love me, you'll do this for me. If you love me, you'll, you know, so then at that point, they feel like it's too late. They don't know what else to do, who else to turn to, nowhere else to go.
So the kinds of activities that your pimp wanted to do, obviously prostitution,
right.
Escorting. Was there like a demand that you had to make a certain amount of money, you know,
Yes.
like every night, and then if of course you didn't meet your quota, then, and there wasn't like, oh, I'm going to take off this week or anything like that. It was like you're out there every night and you're working for me.
Right, and you know, there was a quota for each girl, and if you didn't meet that quota, you have to find it somewhere. And prostitution doesn't just happen on your street corner. It happens in clubs, it happens on the internet, it happens 24/7. It's just not a 3 a.m. thing that you see, you know, that on the street corner. This happens before our very eyes and we don't realize it. So that's why I'm so thankful that you have us here today to really share with Hawaii that this does not happen only in foreign countries. This happens in our very own backyard. And people maybe don't want to discuss it. They don't want to talk about it. It's a touchy subject, you know, but people need to know about it. We need to bring awareness to our community so we can, you know, for future generations, I want to be sure that they're educated about this to, you know, prevent any of this from happening to their very own children, to their sister, and that's why we're here today.
Well, I really appreciate having both of you on. I think it's such an important topic, and I'm certain we're probably going to get mail from all over the country about this, because it's not just an issue in Hawaii, but it's an issue worldwide.
Yes.
In dealing with the sex trafficking issue. Folks, if you're joining us, we are covering sex trafficking in Hawaii. Really, it's sex trafficking everywhere. And I have two guests on. We have Kathy Xian from the Pacific Alliance to Stop Safely, and Kalei, who is a survivor of sex trafficking. I'd like to roll a tape now for the audience that talks about the journey out of the lifestyle of sex trafficking. If we could roll that tape right now, it would be great.
I was 19. I met him online. When I got into the house, it was an actual trap. I was held at gunpoint from then on, and they also threatened my family, and if I didn't cooperate with them. I tried to run away before, and I got beat up. He just yanked me by my collar or my shirt, pulled me back in there, and just beat my ass to, I don't know. There was no leaving. He told me that I'm gonna be working on the streets, you'll be wearing nice clothes, and you're gonna, excuse my language, but you're gonna be my bitch.
Kathy, you're doing some incredible work with helping some of these victims to become survivors with your organization. And I know you've been up here at the Capitol to testify last session, and of course this session as well too, to talk about this issue of sex trafficking. How typical is this? I mean, how many girls have you encountered through your work and helped escape? And were they in similar situations as Kalei or different?
Kalei, yeah.
Kalei.
Well, one is one too many.
Right.
We've seen several. We've seen, I think in the past year, over 40, and we're an all-volunteer organization. And this isn't something that can be ignored, because the more you ignore it, the more it's allowed to fester and grow as a criminal industry. And as you know, you may or may not know, it's the #2 largest criminal industry in the world. It even surpasses illegal arms dealing as far as how lucrative it is. And it's lucrative because you don't have to hide the contraband. You know, contraband is women. It's their bodies, and they are treated like bodies, like disposable trash, like things, objects to be owned. And I think what I've seen over the past decade since I've been working in anti-trafficking work is that this is definitely affecting the community. It's affecting peer culture. It's affecting the culture of youth, where you see a lot of glorification of pimp culture through hip-hop especially. And that's affecting the younger generations at a rate that we really have to take a stand and check that before it gets worse. Because once you start changing the minds of youth and you change their culture to allow sex trafficking, prostitution, pimping to be acceptable, it's really difficult to erase that or rewind that. and teach healthier lifestyles.
You know, I have to agree with you. It seems as though now we've kind of, kind of gone down this amoral slope in society where more and more things are being tolerated. You look at MTV, you look at, some of these shows that they put on where, this is almost like it's normal, it's okay, to be in the kind of situation. And I'm just wondering what we can do as both, lawmakers and also parents. Kalei mentioned she met someone as young as 15, and I've read reports where they go as young as 12.
Yeah.
What are some of the warning signs? What are the things that, as parents of these young girls, to look out for? What are the warning signs?
I think not so much as the warning signs, because it shouldn't be their burden to bear to prevent their own exploitation. But I think what we need to do as parents and as a community is to teach about healthy relationships, how to negotiate and how to create healthy relationships, whether it be with an intimate partner or in a parental setting or with just friends. What are your boundaries? Because I think women throughout time, actually, and especially today, have been confronted with an inability to know when to say no, or what is appropriate according to them. And I think today, you couple that with the emergence of the sexualization of young girls. Like the youngest victim that we had was 11 years old.
Wow.
There is a problem with that sexualization of girls. There's no real form of counter movement against that. And I think creating new laws is positive. It's going in the right direction. But with that, you also have to fight this war on other fronts, because this is a multifaceted fronted war. You have to educate youth, you have to educate the older generations as well. You have to start with policy changes on all levels of government and law enforcement, as well as create new laws. You also have to change the hearts and minds of people, because they don't see these people as citizens and human beings. I think the general public views prostitutes as willing participants in their own sexual exploitation, and that's absolutely wrong. It's absurd. What's really going on is their sexual commercial exploitation by men, usually, not all the time, but by men, and it usually starts out in a relationship kind of format where we call it the lover-boy approach, what Kalei brought up. So they trick these women and girls to fall in love with them, and they give them the world for the first few weeks. And then after that, once they've broken into her heart and stolen her heart, the common saying amongst pimps is, if you make the girl fall in love with you, you don't have to really beat her that often, Because that type of manipulation, that intimate relationship infiltration and manipulation is so hard to rewind, and that is just as abusive as the physical abuse and torture that these women and young girls have to face on a daily basis. They get no breaks, there's no days off. They have to work whenever the pimp trafficker says they work. If they don't make enough money, then they get beaten or tortured or starved, put in vats of ice for an hour to the point of death. Other forms of torture that doesn't necessarily show up in marks, but definitely what the wounds that you don't see are the emotional wounds that the pimp trafficker enforces upon these girls, because they essentially have broken their hearts. They have violated their trust. They have eradicated any ability for that young girl or woman to believe that they could ever trust anyone again. And that is, to me, and our allies, and I'm sure Kalei is on board, one of the most egregious and horrible crimes against humanity is that unseen wound of heartbreak and violation of trust, on top of physical torture and manipulation.
Kalei, to kind of finish your story, so how did you get out?
Well, at that time, that was about 2 years ago. I've been out about 2 years now. I I was looking for someone to help me, and I couldn't find anyone. That's why I'm thankful for organizations like PASS now, that we're able to be that voice to these girls, and I'm able to be that light of hope to them and let them know that I'm living proof. You know, at that time when I got out, I just hit rock bottom, and I cried out to God, and I was like, you know, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I just went to church. I started going to church and got connected with people that just loved on me for who I was and actually seen me as a person. They seen me as someone's daughter, someone's mother, sister, and they helped me every step of the way. And I believe that because I'm a living testament of that. So now that's what I do. That's what we do. We help girls, we help women, let them know that they're not alone, that we'll help them every step of the way, no matter what it takes. You know, that you can live a different life. It is possible, you know, that you weren't created just to be on the track, just to be in some club, that you have a destiny, you know. And these girls, every single day, day in and day out, they're beat down emotionally, mentally, and they're told that they're nothing. They're told that they're nothing more than a female dog, you know, and that is so dehumanizing. No woman should have to go through, no little girl should have to go through that, you know, and it happens here in Hawaii. So I'm just so thankful that we're able to voice this and be the voice for those that may not be able to speak up on their own right now in this very moment. But we're here, there's resources available, we're here to help connect you, you know, just let you know that don't give up, you know, that there is hope out there for you.
In terms of the healing process, how far along do you think you are with that, being that everything that you've gone through? And I think you brought up an important point about the trust factor, to ever really trust somebody again and to be able to get into a relationship again. How are your thoughts now about that?
Well, I've come a really long way, you know, and I was destroyed emotionally, mentally, and physically at times. So I had to begin that rebuilding process. Literally, I was at ground zero from the inside, and I had to build up that self-confidence again. I surrounded myself with people that spoke life into me, that told me I was worth something, that told me there is more to life than what this is. You know, I had to, everything that I was brought up in a good family, everything that I was taught, everything that I learned, it's like it wiped out because of all that abuse that was done to me. And it's unexplainable. I can't really explain it, but I was literally diminished and I had to start all over again. And that takes a lot, but it's a constant day in and day out. I had a fight in me that didn't want to give up. For some reason, I knew that little bit inside of me knew that there was a better life. Like, I knew I was worth something more than just someone's hoe, just someone's prostitute. I was someone's mother, and I had to learn that all over again and really believe it myself. So I've come a long way, and you know, by helping these girls, it continues to help me, because by being that light of hope to others and to let them know that they're worth it, you know, they're worth so much more than what these men do to them and say to them, you know. And I know what has helped me, so I want to make sure I provide that to others.
Kathy, we have some legislation during this 2012 session.
Yes, lots.
That's pending to try to address this. We're running kind of short on time, but if you could maybe give us a run through of some things, and you encourage people, I guess, to come out and support maybe some of these measures. But I guess you would work with Representative Mizuno, who's the chair of the Human Services Committee.
Yeah.
Could you give the audience a little overview of what to look for and things that they should support?
Yeah, there are 7 bills related to prostitution and human trafficking that we have supported through this session since it started. Among those, most of them deal with increasing appropriate victims' response and doling out appropriate services. Because we, as a state, do not really handle victims of human trafficking for either sex or labor necessarily appropriately. And we need to start being able to do that. We've just begun since last year, after the human trafficking laws passed became codified, to recognize this as a crime. according to the law books. And so with that, we need to start developing protocols to address that. These bills do that. They also allow for certain rights and funding vehicles for services, rights for victims to be able to vacate their convictions if they were found as a victim of promoting prostitution in the first degree, which is forced or coerced prostitution, or the prostitution of a child. And so these are very important bills that we feel need to be addressed, including also a measure to create curriculum, the DOE that the DOE would then implement for public school children from grades 7 through 12, age appropriate, of course, because really they're the ones at risk. Generally speaking, of course, you do get some private school kids that do get sucked into this trade, but generally the public school kids are the targeted kids. They're the at-risk youth, and we need to equip them and arm them with the ability to recognize what a pimp is, what sexual exploitation looks like, what healthy relationships look like, for that matter, and how to avoid risky behaviors and risky environments. And it's just a no-brainer to us. And this needs to happen now because, as Kalei said, the pimps are actively recruiting in schools. And we can vouch for this as well because we have youth victims of sex trafficking that attest to that fact.
Obviously, this is not just happening in Hawaii, it's really all over the world. And we do get viewers that watch our show from outside of Hawaii. Organizations that you know of that they can contact? Should they go to churches, call the police?
Well, if you suspect a victim, you should definitely call the National Human Trafficking Hotline. That's 888-3737-888. Or you can call our hotline, which is local. It's 808-343-5056. And our organization is called the Pacific Alliance to Stop Trafficking. To Stop Slavery, which is trafficking. And definitely call the police. You want to hit as many forces of good as possible when you respond to victims.
Folks, we've ran out of time, unfortunately. I want to thank both of my guests for coming in and talking about this very important subject. And if you have any comments about this show or you need assistance, you can also call my office as well, too, 586-8525. And my email address is repfontaine@capital.hawaii.gov. Again, thank you for joining us this evening, and please let us know if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.